Hi there, welcome to this week's Record Rangers podcast. I'm your host, Douglas Dickie. We're brought here with our sponsors, NordVPN. Stay safe online while being able to stream all the best football action. I'm joined, there's just two of us this week, Andy Newport. Scott McDermott's off on holiday, sunning himself somewhere, no doubt.
Do you know what? I texted him yesterday, I'm not talking to you anymore, because the fact he's taken this week of all weeks as a holiday, I thought I can see right through you, man. I'm getting him to pick the lottery numbers, because there's no way he didn't see this whole, how do we say, omni shambles, let's put it that way, coming. Lucky we get the week after. So I'm left to pick up the pieces of the aftermath of.
I'm going to ask to borrow his crystal ball to see if I need to bother with the rest of the season. So, you know, Andy, you've kind of touched on it. It's been written about extensively. You've discussed it in Hotline Live. Just briefly, obviously, events after the game have kind of taken over the game itself. We don't want to dwell on it too much. What was what was your take on it from the press box?
Listen, it was. I think we'd all been looking forward to seeing what an Old Firm game with the full allocation would look like again. I actually thought the atmosphere wasn't that great on the day. Nothing to do with the nonsense being chanted at both ends of the ground. I just thought, because the game was so tense, I thought you could feel that round about the ground. There was that sort of tense, sort of quiet hum at times. It wasn't the full-throated atmosphere, certainly like maybe you got the week before when obviously Rangers were really on top in the first half. But what followed afterwards is just disgraceful on so many fronts. From the Celtic fans storming the away end in terms of getting through the barricades without tickets, counterfeit tickets, some of the absolutely disgusting slurs that we've seen, the graffiti that have been dubbed in the walls. And obviously after the penalty shootout, the absolute mayhem. Listen, Celtic fans will argue that they were only celebrating a win. They shouldn't be in the park. I think we can all agree with that. But the reaction from some of the supporters from the Colton Road end is just absolutely disgraceful. It is not what the club, from a Rangers point of view, will want to see. It's the last thing that Andrew Kavanagh will want to see, as he looks to try and market this club around the world. And I think there'll be heavy punishments dished out to both clubs. I think for both supporter groups, especially certain elements of both supporter groups, they just need to grow up. I mean, listen, we all agree that the Ultras bring a noise and a colour that at times has been sort of sadly lacking in ground since we went to all-seater stadiums. That's fine. That's great. We can all agree that that's a welcome addition to the football landscape. But the sort of stuff we saw the weekend, frankly, I can live without it. I think most fair-minded fans can live without it. I was, sitting in the gantry as the stampede across the pitch started. I mean, I was heartened by the fact that there was a lot of people sitting behind me booing the Rangers fans, booing the actions of, as I say, a small minority. But listen, all it has done, all it has succeeded in doing is heaping shame and disgrace on both clubs. And I think both boards, as I say, the wider fan base will agree they can live without this stuff. So for me, grow up. That's the way I would look at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just, obviously sitting the Copman Road end and the cantilever above the Union Bears, I just wanted to get out of there. As soon as that last penalty hit the net, a really disappointing day on the part from a Rangers point of view. That's 2 games in a week we've played. What I think it's fair to describe, I think even Celtic fans will admit, is a pretty weak Celtic team.
Yeah.
At Ibrox, full house, and twice we failed to beat them. Obviously, penalties is a little bit of a lottery when you get there, but it kind of felt like Annan had come to Ibrox with more attacking intent than Celtic did on Sunday, and yet they've managed to see it out reasonably. Rangers did have a lot of the ball, and we did have chances. We had a couple kind of goal mouth scrambles where the ball gets cleared, We weren't exactly carving Celtic open. It was just it's been such a disappointing week, and I think a few red flags. Fans now see a few red flags with the manager, with Danny Rohl. He's got a few questions to answer. I'm certainly one myself who, when he came in, was a bit wary of another what felt like a project manager. Similar, not the same as Russell Martin. Danny Rohl's at least got experience at places like Bayern Munich, where he should be aware of the pressures to win. But ultimately, it's a guy with just 2 seasons worth of experience managing a team behind him, never in a top flight. And I think the worry amongst the Rangers support is we're kind of seeing that naivety. And he doesn't seem to be learning from his mistakes either. Games where he should be putting to bed, we should be putting to bed. Do you think it's fair that there's pressure on him, Andy?
No, sorry. I don't think it's fair. Let me put it that way. So I think this is a guy who's, for the most part of his time here, he's been playing 2 games a week. Playing, recovering, maybe 1 or max 2 sessions to get his ideas across. Okay, right, leading into these 2 games, he's had 3 weeks to build up. And I don't think you can get away from the fact that these 2 results are hugely damning for Danny Rohl, but I certainly don't think we're anywhere close to the sort of stage that the club was at with Russell Martin, and how quickly things turned on him. I do think he's got questions to answer, but I think, frankly, the club has to get out. I mean, and again, I said this, I was so strong in saying this last summer, and quickly came to the conclusion that they had to make a change, but they can't keep sacking managers. They have to stand by somebody sooner or later.
But then just to kind of come in that, if you can see something going wrong, like with Russell Martin, we could all see it going wrong in front of us.
Yeah.
Is it not worse to stick with it? And then
that's the difference. I think Russell Martin, from the off, was the wrong guy in the wrong movie and was never going to work. And I thought it was a wrong choice from the start. I said so last summer before his appointment. So this isn't hindsight talking. I was very sceptical of that appointment from day one. Didn't think he had anything like a track record that suggested he should be Rangers manager. I don't think Ibrox is the type of place where you can have a dogmatic, philosopher as a manager. You have to be a pragmatist. There is no doubt that Danny Rohl has that sort of subset within him. But listen, he's got to improve. But I think we all agreed that the squad was miles short of what was required last summer, despite having spent huge amounts on it. And yeah, they spent more on it, and there's undoubtedly been improvements in areas. I think Tuur Romans has been an upgrade at left back. I think Tochi Chukwueze, surprised I was that he didn't start at the weekend, but I think you can see he adds power and quality in the centre of the pitch. I think Ryan Nadiri, I must admit, I'm struggling to see a wee bit with him what his main attributes are. I thought he was going to be a bit more technical. I think he's looking a wee bit more ungainly than I expected him to be. But listen, I think he's young as well, and he's literally here a month. He needs time to sort of find his feet. And then as for Scott Volson, I think we'll come on that later. But I don't think he's lived up to expectations. But I think you can see from the type of players that Danny Rohl wants to bring in, the kind of idea, the kind of vision he's got for the team. I think there has been improvements, but listen, they're still being let down by players that have either been signed last summer or guys who have never really sort of quite hit the standards at Ibrox for a long, long period. So, I think, in fairness to Danny Rohl, Russell Martin get given a pre-season at the very least, and he couldn't make it stick. I think Danny Rohl deserves a pre-season. I think we can hold off judgments until that point. If it gets to the first 5-6 league games of next season and they're nowhere in a title race, then yeah, by all means you can vilify them at that point. But end of the day, still working with somebody else's squad, and as I say, I think that he's shown enough to suggest that he is somebody that will be aware of the areas that need to be fixed. I wrote a piece last week in the build-up to the game going that it seems that Danny Rohl, he fixes one issue and then something else crops up somewhere else, and I think that's why he really needs a proper transfer window. We know how difficult January is, and I think Rangers did well to get 4 players in January, but he needs a proper window and a proper pre-season for you really to judge whether or not he's the right guy. I don't know how you feel about that, if that's
yeah, I think
duly lenient on him, or if you agree with that.
I think my issue with it is Sunday on its own. I think you can kind of say, well, look, Rangers completely dominated 120 minutes. So something that I don't really think we've done against Celtic for many, many years.
Yeah.
Save maybe the 3-0 game at Ibrox at New Year last year. So on its own, these things happen. Penalty shootout, anything can happen. And yet it's part of a kind of pattern where he doesn't seem to be learning from those mistakes. And in some ways, last week was probably more damning of him as a manager, because I thought he'd get his substitutions wrong. The Motherwell debacle, Livingston having to come from 2-0 behind. There's now that kind of body of evidence. And in some ways, he's been a victim of his own success early on, that he's kind of dragged us back into this title race. And I think I've said it before on here, but we're now in the point where, well, that's great, but we're now in a title race. And for me, a Rangers manager to finish third without a trophy at the end of the season is very difficult. And well, I agree with you that we can't keep sacking managers. We're in this sort of horrible cycle.
Rinse and repeat, is John.
Aye, rinse and repeat. But if that means going with the wrong guy, and I'm not saying that Danny Rohl is the wrong guy. I genuinely don't know. If I'm being honest, I'm completely, 1 minute I'm up there, 1 minute I'm down there, as most fans are. I just don't know. But if he is the wrong guy, if Kavanagh is having doubts, they would need to act now. Don't, because we've seen it with Gio. Gio got until November, sacked. Beale got until October, by which time league seasons were already over. Beale got to October for some bizarre reason. I mean, Beale should never get the job in the first place, but that's a different argument altogether. I agree with Russell Martin, who Kevin Thelwell should have been sacked for that alone. Come on again, allowed to kind of continue. And I know it was a different situation with come on in the sense that there's stuff going on, but
I feel for Philippe Clement. I think he was given a raw deal, especially that summer when basically his budget was drastically downsized against what he'd been told previously. Obviously, then you have the Ibrox shambles. I think you look at what he's doing now at Norwich, tells you that he's a good manager. And
he does tend to start really well places, come on, and then it falls off a cliff, though. This is the kind of pattern of his managerial career.
I think this comes back to the standard of player that Rangers have been signing for too long. And listen, I mean, you can talk about the investment the club's made in the summer and whether or not even the guys coming in have got the wherewithal and the mentality. And Danny Rohl, when we spoke to him after the game, was insistent it didn't come down to mentality. But I disagree with him, because I think in the big moments, the top players, and what differentiates the top players from your average guy isn't ability in the ball. It's really how they handle their emotions and their composure levels in the big moments. And I think that's what you're seeing with Rangers. All they needed really in the key moments when they're creating all these chances, we've got so much of the ball, somebody just to be cool, calm, collected, and pick the right pass. But too often when Rangers get in the final third, it's headless chicken stuff, it's thrashing at stuff. I don't know how many times, was it 24 shots Rangers created at the weekend? How many of them were just blasted straight off somebody's shins? How many of them were blasted over the bar because there's that panic? There's instead of ice in the veins, it's head loss stuff, rush of blood to the head. I think that's it's a lack of quality, but a lack of the lack of composure, the lack of cool, and that's a mentality thing, leads to that lack of quality. So this is why I go back to recruitment. I mean, knowing how Rangers sit in the food chain, the financial food chain, it is difficult. You could spend £8 million and it's going to get you somebody right now that looks like Andrew Scott Wilson, who I just don't think that deal's going to happen now. I think he's played his way out of that, frankly. I don't know if we'll come to that later, but I think again, Rangers. I mean, and Danny Rohl did speak about this in January, that he was going to have to, really sit down with players and make sure he could look them in the eye and make sure that they knew what it took to play for Rangers. I think that's going to be the biggest thing come the summer, is that, again, can you get guys that can handle Glasgow? Because so far, even the guys that have come in January, one or two of them are starting to look like they're not quite up to the mental task of playing for Rangers.
Yeah, I mean, there was one really telling moment for me that kind of summed up the entire game. I think it was an injury time at the end of the 90. And Nico Raskin get the ball maybe 35 yards for goal with a chance to put a cross in, and he just booted it right at the park over everyone. And it's just, that's one of our established players, so to speak, doing that. If that's one of your leaders doing it, that obviously it just really summed the day up for me. The one thing I think Rohl does have in his, in the plus column, I feel like, is, you've touched on it, I think Romans and Chukwane look like really good signings, and I think they look physically. I mean, again, I've rarely seen a Rangers team look so much more physical since the Walter Smith era. Than Celtic. We just look bigger. Danny Rohl obviously has a type. Nadiri's also quite a physical guy. He's not been quite the out-and-out striker I was expecting. I was expecting a kind of goal poacher almost. He's been very different. He's obviously been a player I think bought with next season in mind. But
I think he's having to sacrifice himself for Chermiti in that sense. Chermiti looks like the established number 9, and as a pairing it looks great. It's not so much when Nadiri's on it, it's when Chermiti's on it. I mean, I think Nadiri, you see himself, he's the guy dropping into pockets. He's the guy trying to be the link man, try to draw bodies in and make that space for Chermiti. And I think, as you saw last week, first 45 minutes, when Chermiti's at it, they look a right handful. But this is the problem with Yusuf Chermiti. From one week to the next, you don't know what you're getting. And unfortunately, I think that maybe limits the effectiveness of Ryan Nadiri. We've not really seen Nadiri, certainly, a proper Premiership game, have that run up front on his own. I wonder if that's something that they'll now be looking to do, just to maybe, again, give Chermiti just a week off and just to recharge his own batteries and to go again. But, I mean, I just thought, to be honest, I didn't think it was a great game. I didn't think it was a game in which Rangers made the most of their front men. I mean, they went so long and so direct at times, playing off second balls, playing off flick-ons, and then it just became a bit of an arm wrestle. And really, Rangers, their main tactic really was just to win flick-ons, and if they couldn't go right through the centre backs, then it was like get to the byline, get crosses in. And Celtic obviously played with Liam Scales at left back, had an extra height. I think they realised the need to match up physically at Rangers' front pair, and I thought Celtic actually handled that really well in the day. I mean, I didn't think. What was it? Was there a clear-cut shot on target of any great description? Not really. I can't.
Probably Chermiti in the first half extra time.
The one he drags wide just after the disallowed goal. Yeah, so I mean that's not a shot on target. That's just a clear-cut opportunity of the game.
That's had one off the line for a corner, but it was very much kind of scrambly.
Yeah, I mean it was actually Giga who cleared it. It was Fernandez' header, wasn't it? So yeah, I mean it was a poor game all round. I mean, like that would be, we were all sitting again going. I mean, I was amazed coming in and watching, seeing some comments from some neutrals from down south talking about. How great a game it was, and how great a spectacle it was, and a proper derby, and I had all that, but I'm thinking, God, how bad are Premier League standards, or how boring is the Premier League to watch now? If English fans are sitting here going, "Wow, this was a great derby," I thought both teams were really poor. So many slag passes, kicks out the park, heavy touches, whereas last game, okay, it was a game of two. Last week's game, although it was a game of two halves, it was a thrilling game, and it was some properly decent footballing show at times. Whereas I just thought, all in, both teams were pretty rotten on the day, and it was no surprise that it ended up going to extra time and then penalties. So, I said, in terms of, I just wonder from your point of view, what does this do for the title race now? What does it do for Rangers' belief? To be so close, sitting at half time last week, thinking I think a lot of fans were thinking this could be 4 or 5. To find yourself pegged back to 2 each with a last minute penalty, and then to lose in the manner they did with all the handbags and stuff after the game and the nonsense after the game. Where does this leave Rangers' squad and their confidence levels?
Well, I mean, I'm now quite open. I don't think Rangers have got the minerals to win the league. Now that may be a wee bit of self-preservation on my part. I've always been wary this season. I even saying we were in a title race, but we undoubtedly are or have been. There's 27 points to play for. I mean, are we going to, Hearts would need to drop 7 points out of 27 and we would need to win every game? I think that's a big ask. Fun enough, I still don't see anything. The thing is, it could, obviously, the mental boost from winning this could aid Celtic, but I still don't see anything for Celtic as a football team to be particularly concerned about. But they've obviously got players who've been round the block. They've got a manager who's been round the block.
I mean, that is the thing to draw from the game, is that, I mean, I don't think Rangers could have handpicked a Celtic starting 11 any better than the one that Martin O'Neill put out. I mean, you're missing, even just forgetting the long-term guys like Carter Vickers and Alistair Johnson and Jota. I mean, you're taking Kieran Tierney and Callum McGregor at a Celtic lineup. I mean, that has to be seen as a huge boost for Rangers, but they just never imposed themselves. I don't think they ever truly believed that they were going to win the game. I think that's the difference with Celtic, and we've seen that time and time again this season. As much as they're a poor team, they've got a first-class resolve and mentality. It comes back to mentality. When Celtic are struggling, even if they're not playing well, they still believe they can get a result. Rangers have to be playing well, have to be feeling confident, and have to have things go their way, and can't have anything that knocks them out their strides. As we saw last week, everything's going perfect for them for the first 50 minutes. All it took was for Celtic to beat their press for the first time. Anxiety fills Ibrox, fills the crowd, because I think the crowd at that point have got no faith in the team to withstand that, and they end up crumbling. So I agree with you. I think Rangers have left themselves too much to do. Listen, it might get tight, but I still don't have. They might get themselves back into it, but I don't have that faith in this team that should it come to the nitty-gritty final day of the season, if they had to grind out a win, whether it be at Falkirk or Easter Road or whoever it is that they might have to play in the final day, that they could get the job done. I'm not sure that they have got the minerals is a great description. I'm not sure they've got that to go over the line.
One guy who was meant to, I thought might have taken us on to that next level. You've mentioned him twice now, as Skov Olsen, but he's been such a massive disappointment. And I think I do have some sympathy for him in the sense he hadn't played an awful lot of football before he came here. Mm-hmm. But as a loan signing, I say it all the time about loan guys. If you're bringing a guy in on loan, we need him to be good yesterday. Yeah. It's no good that this football might get him ready for next season or a few weeks' time. If you're in on loan, you need to hit the ground. You've got to hit the ground running, because you're only here for a relatively short period of time, and it feels like he is now going to be here for a relatively short period of time, because even if you are looking towards next season, you're thinking, look, when this guy gets up to speed, he's going to be a real asset. I think the Rangers board would struggle to justify the expenditure on him, given the evidence that we've got, from his and just you spoke about Scales. I mean, I thought in the fullback area, Celtic were really, that we should have been attacking that. I think Scales was booked as well quite early.
Booked after a foul on Sterling,
and the other boy on the other side is getting run ragged by Mikey Moore, an 18-year-old boy. And Skov Olsen, for me, that should have been set up for him to really impose himself in the game.
You're talking about Skov Olsen up to speed. And listen, we all know, you just have to look at his track record to see that the guy has had quality. I've yet to see any signs that he's still got that quality yet. I mean, I think that is that. I mean, he's played. We've talked about it last week. A couple of moments, a couple of crosses for Chermiti, the goal against Kilmarnock, but that's it. And then you're looking at the weekend there, going, like, you've been here for 5-6 weeks now. You've had 5-6 starts. When are you going to show something properly? It's sustained, a proper performance, not a moment or two, Not just a couple of glimpses, but then do nothing. When are you going to properly play a good hour, a proper hour of showing what you've got? And he just didn't. These were the games that Danny Rohl would have had in mind for Andrew Scott-Wilson, a guy with 40 caps for Denmark that's 200 appearances in his career, almost 100 goals in his career as well. This is a guy that should be, grabbing this game by the scruff of the neck, and he was a passenger. In fact, he was almost anonymous at spells. I felt he dug in a wee bit more than he did off the ball, certainly than he did last week. But on it, just nothing, just happy to play square passes, happy to lay the ball off, but never, as you say, Scales is on a booking within, was it 20, 25 minutes? At no point did he look like he was ready to go past him, take him on. So I think, in terms of the arrangement to get him in on loan, I think Andrew Kavanagh might be looking back in that one and going, that was probably a wise move, this try before you buy it. And my fear for Scott Wilson, because, and I do fear for him because he's been a fantastic player back in his day, but I feel that this is a decline now. I feel that this is, or certainly he needs something else to get him turned on. I mean, I do remember speaking to a Belgian journalist who said, "Listen, he's a guy when he feels it, he's great and he's electric, but he is a guy whose appetite levels can wander, and I think we're seeing that a wee bit now. And unless he gets something to get the juices flowing and get him, frankly, falling back in love with the game, I think his career's in danger of dwindling out, which is a real shame because I think he's fantastic talent. And as I say, we've seen him when he's been at his best. He's, was it 26 goals in his first season for Northland? I think it was 50 goals over 3 seasons with Bruges. The guy's top class when he's at it, but for whatever reason, he's not getting there right now. So, as I say, unless there's something drastic, and I think he would have to be, listen, he's going to drag Rangers to a title against all the odds. I don't think there's any chance Rangers pay the £8 million for him. I think they go, right, we'll go and see if we can spend that money better elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were a few individual positives, I thought, on Sunday. The two centre-halves were excellent. Giga's come in, and I think it's very telling that Giga came in and then he came off and John Suter came on, and all of a sudden it felt like a bit of panic.
I remember
that Rangers team.
Yeah, I remember Giga's performances before AFCON, and he was a bomb scare, frankly. And I remember a lot of people. I remember writing a story saying that he was, I think it was maybe Hibs away, or can't remember what the game it was, but he saying that, that's him back. And I remember looking at some of the comments under it, and people like, well, we're not bothered about him coming back. Manny Fernandez at that point had come in and established himself. Suter was still seen as the other first choice centre back, but then the few times he has come back in since AFCON, he's actually taken his game up a level or two in a way that I hadn't really ever seen him play. And I thought he was terrific. I mean, right for the off on Sunday, Bayeda's speed and his pace in behind, and he matched him for every stride. And apart from one, I think, sort of moment where he got in a wee bit of a mix-up with Butler and a back pass, I thought he was so calm in a way that, I had seen, it wasn't something I would associate with him. But then, as you say, you compare that to Suter, who I kind of think has been stung by some of the criticism he got, certainly for the penalty that led to the equaliser last week. He looked like his confidence was shot because he was all over the place in extra time, and there was a couple of moments where Rangers really did get away with it. I think it was a pass back to Butland as well that was very nearly sort of intercepted. So, that's a concern because I do think John Suter will be a regular for the rest of the season, and if his form's starting to wane, it's a concern for Rangers, but more importantly for the national team heading into a World Cup. I think that's a concern because, again, I still think he's a mainstay of that Scotland team. So, I mean, in terms of other individual performances, I thought Chutwani, I was surprised to see him left out. I thought he was good coming on. You see, Romans was solid without being spectacular, but I just thought Rangers lacked so much quality in the final third, which is, really what let them down when you consider just how much possession and territory they had.
Obviously got to pick ourselves up pretty quickly, dust ourselves down. Short trip to Paisley on Sunday. You see changes maybe to the team, Andy, to the formation. You were talking about how we, that kind of style of play. I'm still not 100% sure what Danny Rohl's style of play is. Is it going to be more of the same? Get the ball wide, try and get crosses into the two bigger guys, or can you see us trying to be a bit more expansive? But then, I mean, I know it's not called Love Street anymore, but Love Street's I struggle to remember games where Rangers have won there really comfortably, even when we were, winning league titles regularly. It's not a great venue.
No, I mean, Rangers' record there can be a bit patchy. I'm sure I looked up. I don't think they've ever. I did a stat a year or two ago. I think there's only been once or twice since that stadium opened. I think it was 2009. I think they've only won there by 2 or more goals, maybe. 3 goals, maybe once or twice. I mean, I
remember one in the Seville season. I think we went there on 4-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's that,
on the whole, it's really been, they've been tight and they've been feisty, especially with this Sitman team. We know that they're horrible to play against in terms of just the physicality they bring. Listen, this Rangers team should be better equipped to deal with that. Certainly, as you talk about the physicality that's been added to the team, but Sitman are struggling. And again, this is a team whose form has collapsed since their League Cup win. So, but if Rangers can't go there and get a result, then frankly they just don't deserve to be in a title race. They don't deserve to be winning titles. So this is this kind of test that teams that are serious about winning titles go and tick off. Doesn't matter how they do it. If it's a 1-0 with the ball coming off somebody's backside, they get the job done. This is something this Rangers team haven't done enough of, and certainly of late, is win by any means.
It's 2 wins and 6 now, I think. 2 wins and 6. One of which was against a Kilmarnock team that played effectively the entire match with 10 men.
3 and 9. I mean, it goes even further back than that. So, I mean, you're talking about. I mean, it's you've seen Celtic, even as poor as they are, and they undoubtedly are a poor team this season. I think even Celtic fans will agree this is far from a vintage Celtic lineup. They've found ways to win. They've ground out wins. They've scored late on. They've went to the death to get a winner. Hearts have been the same. Again, fair play to Derek McInnes, but I don't think even if they win the league, they're not going to rank up alongside the Premiership's greatest ever lineups. But
I mean, listen, I think the Hearts team I've seen in the Premier League, and that's not to do them down, because I mean,
was in front of them, and right now they are beating them. So, but. If Rangers can't find that resolve the way that the other 2 teams are showing, then they won't be in the title race. And it'll probably come at the point. It's right about this stage that Rangers have dropped off a lot of times when they have been chasing. It's right about this. You think back to a couple years ago with Clermont, they were right on it right about this stage, and then just a late collapse. And they've had as you say, 3 wins and 9. Not all of them, obviously in the league, but I think it's 3 draws out of the last 4 in the league. Is that right? Yeah. So I mean, Rangers have had their slip ups. They have to be perfect from now on. I think we were speaking off air when we discussed James Tavernier, and we spoke to him after the game, and he said, it's got to be 27 points out of 27. But he hardly looked convincing when he said it. And I think, just in terms of him, I mean, he looked so frazzled after the game, and no wonder after that penalty miss. I mean, it's the second year running. That penalty miss from him is effectively knocked Rangers out of contributed to Rangers being knocked out of the Scottish Cup. Is he, is his Rangers career in danger of fizzling out? I wrote a piece yesterday for the paper saying that it kind of does feel that way. I don't think that he talked about there still being a belief there that they can win. I'm not sure even he believes that. I mean, how do you see the weekend going?
I mean, first thing I'd say is I'm a big Tav fan. I've been a big defender of him for 10 years, and I think it'd be a really cruel way for his Rangers career to end, for that to be the kind of epitaph, if you like, to miss the penalty that effectively ends the season. I fear it's going to be that, because I just can't see where we're getting all these wins from. Like you say, we're at a stage now where any slip up is likely the end of it. Now, we actually have a reasonable run of fixtures. I think I don't think it's outrageous for Rangers fans to say we should be taking 12 points for the next 12. St Mirren's a tough place to go, but you know they've had their struggles in the league. Although Rangers went to bottom of the league, Livingston, a couple of weeks ago and struggled even just to get a point. We've then got Aberdeen and Dundee United both at Ibrox, two teams with a great deal left to play for, really. And then obviously a tough one just before the split at Falkirk, but again, you know, shouldn't be daunting to anyone. But then after the split,
they're in the top six effectively, aren't they? And they get much hope of catching Hibs? Probably not. So,
but I think you've got then after that we've got to go to Tynecastle, we've got to go to Celtic Park. We're going to need to go to maybe Easter Road again. Although this season kind of brings up that permutation. Maybe Easter Road's the place you want to go because it's just that title race with Hearts. You know, there's so many other things, and I think as well. On the one hand, you know, Motherwell losing on Saturday there does make it a 3-horse race. Now I think you know there's no way Motherwell make up 10 points, but you also kind of feel from my point of view, it's like, oh man, is Motherwell's ball going to burst just as they're about to play Celtic and Hearts? You know, just and it's kind of is that just their luck that Motherwell have been flying and then all of a sudden, you know, that wee pinprick, pinprick. Celtic, other than Motherwell, have got pretty, you know, both Celtic and Hearts don't have particularly difficult fixtures, I don't think, coming up. But like we've seen that teams can drop points against anyone this season. I think that's been the lesson. So while we are in a title race, I obviously will, you know, I'll hope for the best, but I've got to say I'm preparing for the worst because I just don't think this team, I just don't think they've got it in them. I think it'll be real interesting on Sunday to see how we set up. Whether he'll go maybe for 3 in the middle to try and give us a bit more control, as has been his thing away from home. He's tended to go with 3 guys across the middle to try and give us that wee bit extra. I just St Mirren is not a ground that the best compliment I can pay Stevie Robinson and St Mirren is to say it's not a ground I've ever been excited to go and visit, and it's nothing to do with where it is or the ground itself. It's just not a place Rangers we just don't tend to play well there. And I kind of feel like the season's in real danger of petering out. And I think to finish third and trophyless, would be a real, even though he's come in at a time when things haven't been great, to get us back in it and then fail to get, push on. I don't think it puts Rohl in a very good position going into the new season.
Yeah, to go back to what we're discussing at the start, I do think Danny Rohl's the very minimum he has to do this season going forward is give fans reason to have some level of optimism for going forward, right? Okay, they might have blown whatever chances. And listen, nobody expected when he came in that Rangers were going to be challenging, but once you get yourself back into that position to be striking for the top, what you've done previously or where the club was previously is irrelevant, because at that moment there and then, Rangers were 2 points off the top. They're in the title race. Now they're in danger of slipping out of it. So what's gone before, what he inherited from Russell Martin has been done. Now it's about what he has, and he got Rangers back into a position to really challenge, and so they've let it slip. Listen, there's still a chance for them to get back into it, but they have to be perfect. And if that's not enough, okay. But it has to show something that, okay, they're going to carry that into next season, get himself a pre-season, get himself a transfer window where he can really put his proper stamp in the team. As I say, just to discuss the game again, I don't think there was any great style played. But for everyone I've spoke to who knew about Sheffield Wednesday, I've just done a piece for tomorrow's paper with Max Lowe, former Aberdeen defender that signed for Rohl's Sheffield Wednesday team in his second season. He says he'd been playing for Sheffield United the season before. He says he's even sitting across the city, I was so impressed by the way he managed to steer them away from relegation trouble, because when he inherited that Wednesday team, they got off to the worst ever start in the league's history, 11 games without a win, and managed to get them safe by some distance at the end of the season. But again, there's still a lot of stuff going on off the field down there. But with that pre-season, with the right signings, he got a team that had one of the lowest budgets in the division to mid-table, And if anything, they were disappointed they didn't make the playoffs. And everyone I spoke to that was at Hillsborough around about that time felt, and this would be his third season if they stayed on this year, they were thought, even with everything that was going on around the club, the squad he had with Danny Rohl's guidance, they could have had a shot at promotion this year. And obviously, events transpired down there. It wasn't going to be the case. You know, the guts had been ripped out of that club. They've been hit with savage points penalties, and they've been relegated already. I think it was in February they were relegated. So, but the lesson from that is that if you give them a summer, if you give them a proper transfer window, not a January one, but a summer window, and you give them a chance to work with these players, you'll see an extra dimension come in. So that's why my belief is that Rangers fans just need to stick by him. But listen, I think Danny Rohl has to keep up his end of the bargain, and that is to show something that gives them reason to hope and be hopeful for the future. Whether that's a title or just giving it a right good go down the running, that remains to be seen. But I think he does have to give the fans something to hold on to over the summer months.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said when he came in, Danny Rohl, I said, I've no doubt he's a good football manager, but I think there's still question marks over whether he's a good Rangers manager, and they're not always, the same thing.
Yeah.
But these next few weeks, for me, try and finish above Celtic and see where that takes you. I think Hearts will win the league now, I've got to say. So, but if we can finish above Celtic, and who knows, what may happen. Anyway, Andy, we'll wrap it up there. Hopefully, I'm in a bit of a better mood next week, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to discuss. Hopefully, all about the 90 minutes next time rather than stuff that's happened after it. So,
listen, if I'm away to Dublin to do the Six Nations finale this week, so we can just talk about that if things don't go well in Paisley. So we'll just talk about the rugby. I mean, what happened at Murrayfield at the weekend there was far better than what happened at Ibrox. So
it certainly was. And I say that as someone that hates rugby. So anyway, right. Thanks very much to our sponsors at NordVPN. Thanks to Andy as ever, and we'll catch you again next week.